let's go. So this is it. I mean, this is not it. There's obviously some things that need to be done, places that things need to be put. This thing is loud, but look how far back I can go. As far as this will let me. I can spin around, and there's just space. Isn't that the great thing about the universe? Other than, time and matter, but space. I'm almost more surprised that I got this together and was able to do something today than I'm even surprised that we're here. Because we're here. There's things that need to be worked on still, of course, but we're getting there. We're getting there. This light, I had to move things around different than, when I set it up again. And I'm by a window now, so there's natural light coming in the room. Then there wasn't, or there was barely any natural light in the last place. But constantly, just little things, minor details, linear progress. And the principle that continues to show itself is that there's not one way that things can work out. And it's definitely not going to be the way that you thought it was going to work out. If you are relying on the Lord, if you're following His word, seeking His will, doing things His way. For He is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through Him. And just beyond the gospel, after the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, which was one of the devotionals that I had read this morning, our debt has been paid. Colossians. God made us alive together with Him, having forgiven us our trespasses, canceling the record of our debt, and stood against us, the debt that stood against us with legal demands. This He set aside, nailing it to the cross. O perfect redemption, the purchase of blood, to every believer the promise of God, the vilest offender who truly believes that moment from Jesus pardon receives. We all understand that. Just after that, from the moment of conversion and justification, as soon as the sanctification process begins, there is this. And I read it this morning. Another devotional. Don't you just love Oswald Chambers? Getting there. The title, Getting There. Where the selective affinity dies and the sanctified abandon lives. Mark 1:17, come ye after me. I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's fairly, it's long, but it's short, but it's good. One of the greatest hindrances in coming to Jesus is the excuse of temperament. We make our temperament and our natural affinities barriers to coming to Jesus. The first thing we realize when we have come to Jesus is that He pays no attention whatever to our natural affinities. We have the notion that we can consecrate our gifts to God. You cannot consecrate what is not yours. There is only one thing you can consecrate to God, and that is your right to yourself. So again, all that we have has been given of God. What do you have that you have not received? And the only thing that we have is our wills, free will that God has given us. Romans 12:1, He references it. Beseech you, by the mercies of God, present your bodies a living sacrifice. If you will give God your right to yourself, He will make a holy experiment out of you, and God's experiments always succeed. The one mark of a saint is the moral originality which springs from abandonment to Jesus Christ. He's not talking about moral relativism. In the life of a saint, there is this amazing wellspring of original life all the time. The Spirit of God is a well of water springing up perennially fresh. The saint realizes that it is God who engineers circumstances. Consequently, there is no wine, but a reckless abandon to Jesus. This is good. Never make a principle out of your experience. Let God be as original with other people as He is with you. If you abandon to Jesus and come when He says come, He will continue to say come through you. You will go out into life reproducing the echo of Christ's come. That is the result of every soul who has abandoned and come to Jesus. Have I come to Jesus? Will I come now? Don't make a principle out of your experiences. Don't get stuck on the way that you think things ought to happen, or the way that things could happen, what is it we always say? Lean not on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord. With all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. And he will make your path straight. He will direct your path. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. The thing about lamps at your feet, they don't provide much light for what's ahead of you. Pretty much just what's right in front of you. Your feet, where you are, and what's the next step. Or few, whatever. A light to our path. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. We see the conclusion of the story. We know the end, the perfectly, objectively good end. For God works all things together for good. For God Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father. He's preparing a place for us, that where he is, we might be also when he calls us home. Light to our path is sort of just a general thing. It's a big picture. And then the lamp to our feet is the details. But they are, like, you're not going to see all of the bricks on the road. But he will show you what is necessary for what you can plan for, what you can prepare for, what you can do now. Because again, Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough concern of its own. And we're having to let God take care of today anyway. Because again, our very heartbeat, our very breath, our very strength comes from him. That's why he said, you can't consecrate the things that you have. All you can consecrate, the only thing that God has literally given to us and has taken his hands off and lets us determine the consequence of this one thing is our will, what we will do with our lives, because he loves us. For love offers a choice. Love cannot be a mutual, an exclusive option. And I don't mean that to love has to be one thing and then to not love has to be another. I mean that love cannot be the only thing that we can do, because that's not love. Anyway, you get it. But just little things. When I put up the desk again, I had to move the light fixture back. The light still needs to be fixed. There's things, don't mind it. But I had to switch it with my power strip. But when I first put the desk up, I put my power strip up first, and there was a little bit of extra slack on the cord. And I was like, oh, I could have pulled it back, put it in the rest of the cable management, but whatever, it's done. I don't want to have to touch it. But since I had to switch them, I had to move the power strip forward and use that slack, and it was like just the right amount. And why? I don't know. And did that happen with everything? Was everything just perfectly working out? Some of it was. Some of the lengths of the cables and the lengths of these arms and everything. It's like, hey, that worked out really well. Praise God. I didn't have to use all the screws that I used the last time I set this up. So again, experiences and the way that we think it should be, and the way that our hands and our feet move things and, put things into motion, per se. Because the funny thing is that devotional, Getting There, was dated for June 13th. Not July 13th. So I did it again, but it was still good. And July 13th is just an extension of that, where he, referencing Isaiah, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord. And he says, over and over, God has to remove our friends in order to bring himself in their place. We always say, I gave up everything. I became ill. I got disheartened. Did I see the Lord? We can't take it personally when there's failure and there's discouragements. In the year that the one who stood to me for all that God was died. What now? My vision of God depends upon the state of my character. Character determines revelation. Before I can say I saw also the Lord, there must be something corresponding to God in my character. Until I'm born again, just after conversion, and begin to see the kingdom of God, I see along the line of my prejudices only. I need the surgical operation of external events and internal purification. It must be God first, God second, God third, until the life is faced steadily with God and no one else is of any account whatever. In all the world there is none but thee, my God, there is none but thee. Keep paying the price. Let God see that you are willing to live up to the vision. There is a price to pay. There is confusion. There is persecution to be had, of course. But it's better to suffer for doing good than for doing evil if it is God's will. And it's better to go through the trial, to go through the purification process, the refining, and to come out on the other end beautifuler and gooder than to not. It's better to just wait on the Lord and let Him give you the space. Let Him give you the time. Let Him give you the stuff, the matter that He wants for you. And it will always be good. It will always be exceedingly, abundantly above all that we could ask or think. Because that's just who He is. He's just a cool guy like that. He's a gentleman. He's a giver. He's a blesser. He's got big hands and a lot of stuff. According to the riches of His grace. According to the riches of heaven. The guy who owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. That's my dad. And the times where you're sitting in the back of your desk on the floor and you didn't think to put a pillow on the ground and you're tired after work and you've had to put this off for a while because you're trying to help other people with other things. It's all you can think is, this is good. Before I can see God in the circumstance, my character has to be that which corresponds to looking to God, to hearing, to be listening for what He's saying in every single circumstance. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. And then you realize that all of this has worked out. And not necessarily because I did think, well, project management, if I get this done by this day, and then I can switch this and do this on this day instead so I can focus on this, then by here I'll be able to, it never works out. It never works out. But it works out. You know what I mean? It never happens the way that you wanted it to happen. It never happens the way you hoped it would happen. It never happens even necessarily best case scenario. But again, what is best case scenario? Never rely on your experiences for principles. Why did Jesus heal similar ailments, diseases, things in different ways? Likely, you could say, and not necessarily only, but likely because He didn't want people to get stuck on the method. It's about the power of God. It's about the Spirit of God in our lives that does things that immediately after we've come to faith in Jesus, after we've been adopted, if we've been grafted in, we've been transformed, and now we are being transformed and we will be transformed. Spirit, justification. Spirit has been made alive and has been changed. And then the mind, sanctification. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove, that you may evidence, that it may show itself in your life, the good, acceptable, perfect will of God. And then the body, in glorification. The body is transformed. Everything's very practical. Everything's very simple. Yet it's still difficult because we have an adversary. We're passing through a world that is not our home. Beings that are not like us, because their father is the devil and our father is the Lord. Because we still suffer with the nature of this world, the two appetites. And which one will you feed? But we're getting there. That's the point. We're still pressing on to the goal. And that is how they say, you can tell, the destiny of a man is not how he started, not how it went in the middle of the race, but how did he finish? Did he finish the race? Did he run for the imperishable crown? Because all the details along the way, along the span of time, that's in God's hands. But us, our race, our walk, our fight, we choose that. And if we choose God, then He has it all lined up. The place, the time, stuff, and the point of what you're going to say. And then also, the benefit and the result of what you did and said is up to him. Sometimes I feel like this is insignificant, not because of the time that's invested, not because of, the scope of things and the reach, all the logistics aside, all the quantifications aside. There's a lot of just repeating the same thing, but just beyond coming to faith in Christ, as someone that grew up in a Bible teaching church with a Bible believing family, and, for those of us that have a relationship with God, that we're seeking to know who he is and what his will is and so forth, then the principles are all encompassing. But that being the case, what we're learning is how to apply the basic principles, just apply righteous living to different facets of our life, to rethink things that we have done in the past, the process of our thoughts and our actions now, to be reminded of things. We're constantly relearning lessons, but we're getting there. None of us has attained, but we're going. We're on the way. He is doing the work, and he will be faithful to complete the work that he started. So just trust him. Just let him be everything, because he really is. What do we have that we have not received from him? He is. He has. He does everything. And he says, come. So we just say, here am I, Lord. Send me. Hold me. Use me. Speak to me. Only one life 'twill soon be past. Only what is done for Christ will last. Only what is used for Christ will be of true benefit. And that's all that I hope this can be. Again, just another word, another encouragement, another arrow pointing to Jesus. This is what God does. This is what God says. Another bidding of grace and peace and so forth. And we shall see what God will do. So I pray that it continues to be an encouragement for you and a reminder, and do with it what you will. But yeah, I'm done. This has gone long. We'll get into the study. Still haven't gotten my Bible study software back up, and I didn't have time to study this week anyway, so this was the plan, sort of. Grace and peace and so forth.